conference will now be recorded.
You're live.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the Auburn Finance Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024, and we're starting right on time at 5:30 p.m. For tonight's meeting, we will have this call to order. We're going to review some potential transfer requests, discuss FY25 budgets for Bay Path, Norfolk Agricultural Reserve Fund, General Services, Auburn Youth Commission, pensions and benefits. We have a corrected DPW budget to discuss. We'll vote on the capital improvement plan, and then we'll review some warrant articles, and that pretty much rounds out our meeting. Let me read the remote participation script. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, it's 1-786-535-3211 with an access code of 991-599-357. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely are present or can hear me. I believe everybody we have tonight is in person. Michael Marshall?
Present.
Patrick Jones?
Here.
George Graham?
Here.
Stephen Consilio?
Here.
Town officials and employees participating. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Town manager Ed Kazanovich.
Here.
CFO, town accountant Karen Harnoy.
Here.
And administrative assistant Sharon Kwiatkowski.
Here.
Okay, we'll move right into tonight's agenda. We have some transfers to take care of initially. Fire Rescue Department. I don't believe, oh, we do have Chief Coleman has joined us remotely. Chief, did you have anything you wanted to discuss on these transfers before we read them into the record?
No, the overtime transfer is pretty self-explanatory from previous meetings. I will tell the committee that we're doing everything we can to try to reduce the overtime expenses. I reluctantly just reduced the minimum staffing on the department until June 30th. But I would anticipate that the amount that's in overtime will cover us for the next 4 to 5 weeks before I have to come back to finance. But town manager and the CFO, we do have a plan moving forward.
Thank you, Chief. So this is a interdepartmental transfer from the fire department coming from the dispatcher's account. Amount requested $30,000 going to the overtime account. Reason given for the transfer, anticipated overtime to June 30th, 2024. Any questions for the chief, or do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Second transfer from the fire department. This one's coming from dues and meetings account. Amount requested $1,000 going to the building maintenance account. Reason given to cover building-related expenses until June 30th.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Chief, did you have anything, without taking things out of order, you've got one, I think, relatively standard warrant article. Did you have anything to mention on that one? It's, I believe it's coming out, ambulance receipts towards the purchase of an ambulance?
That's correct. We do have a current balance from a previous ambulance purchase, but it is a little short for the new one that's coming in July. So we'll need an additional $30,000 from the ambulance receipts in order to purchase it outright.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Any questions relative to that without completely going out of order? We've got the info.
My only question would be then, with this additional money, is that because we have a final amount intact at this point, so we know what the actual end result's going to be? Or should I say the end cost?
We do. I do not have that number in front of me, but we do have the total cost. Like I said, with the balance of a previous truck that we had approved prior to us accepting the $500,000 donated ambulance. So we need this additional $30,000 to make up the balance, but we do have the total cost of the truck. We'll be taking delivery of it in July.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next one we have is a transfer coming from the reserve account on behalf of the Fleet Maintenance Division. Do you have any, give us some insight on this one?
Thank you. Nick Schwartz, DPW. Here yet again, looking for a transfer from the reserve account to the fleet maintenance budget. And I don't expect this will be the last transfer by the end of the year. Since the time that I submitted this request, we've received over $15,000 worth of maintenance repair bills. Some of those we think can be paid with Chapter 90 funds because those can be used for certain sweeper repairs, and that's what they're related to. So, but there's at least a $7,000 or $8,000 hit since the time I've made this request. So I'm hoping that this gets us at least through April, but we'll be looking at other ways or other potential sources for future transfers, I think.
Anybody have questions relative to the, this transfer?
Motion to approve.
Yeah, so $25,000 amount, present amount in the account 6504, amount requested $25,000 for fleet maintenance, reason given following extraordinary and/or unforeseen expenditures. Yeah, we have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Next one, interdepartmental transfer from DPW Sewer Division. Amount requested $3,800 coming from the wages account, going to the education account. Reason given to cover CDL license classes and training for new employee.
Motion approved.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Next one also coming from the wages account, amount requested $2,400, going to the chemical supply account, reason given to cover price increases for pump station chemicals.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
This one also DPW Sewer Division, coming from the wages account, amount requested $200, going to the postage account, reason given to cover shortage in the account.
Motion approved.
Before I approve, I just have a question. Is this to get us through June, or is this only to cover a short period of time?
This should get us to the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Another transfer coming on behalf of the Human Resource Department, coming from the HR Generalist account. Amount requested $3,000, going to the medical exam account. Reason given to cover costs for medical exams through fiscal year end.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? And, that was already. Okay, so that wraps up what we have for potential transfers. Our first budget on the agenda for tonight is Bay Path. Welcome, if you'd like to come up to the podium, or?
So I had a PowerPoint. Is there a way to access it on this, or you just have it?
Yeah, we all have it, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I'll just walk through it then. Great. Good evening. I'm Kyle Brenner, proud superintendent of Bay Path Regional Vocational and Technical High School. I'd like to recognize our business manager, Irene Hool, who's here tonight as well. All right. So our funding sources, our Chapter 70 and 71 estimates are based on the governor's budget that was submitted January 25th, 2024. The estimated Chapter 70 funding for FY 2025 is $14,453,612. Estimated Chapter 71 funding for FY 2025 is $1,308,294. These are preliminary estimates subject to change as the House and the Senate deliberate on the budget. And on slide 3, you can see the impact on Bay Path. So we show our FY '25 and our FY '24 Chapter 70 minimum contribution and required net school spending. You can see that it's an increase in Chapter 70 of $234,332. Our minimum contribution increased $530,546, and our required net school spending increase total was $764,878. Next slide. FY '25 total budget for assessment is $29,173,197. Our member town assessments are at the minimum, and our budget includes a debt service assessment of $1,552,023. Our operational budget does not require funds above the minimum contributions by member communities, and our member assessments total $12,932,626. Although the assessments are at the minimum, it's important to note that the required minimum contributions that each town must contribute have increased collectively by $530,546. Our member town's transportation assessment has been reduced by $600,000, reflecting the use of our Regional Transportation Reimbursement Fund. Some of the financial highlights: total Chapter 70 revenue is $14,453,612. Our school choice assessment is $296,335. Our Chapter 71 busing aid is $1,308,294. And our use of $75,000 from excess and deficiency will continue funding our OPEB liability, and we'll use $100,000 from excess and deficiency to fund the net school spending obligation as well. Slide 7. This is the budget summary. You can see the Chapter 70, $14,453,612. Our school choice assessment of $296,335. Our assessment minimum contribution, $11,225,779. Our E&D use for OPEB, $75,000. Our E&D use for net school spending, $100,000, for a total of $25,558,056. You can see our transportation total of $2,063,118. Chapter 71 accounts for $1,308,294. And our transportation reimbursement fund use is $600,000, for a total assessment to our towns of $154,824. You can see what comprises the debt service: principal, $820,000, and interest, $732,023, for a total of $1,552,023. Our FY '25 budget for assessment is $29,173,197. Add in the school choice for assessments, that's $296,335, for a total operating budget and school choice of $29,469,532. Our budget highlights. The FY '25 proposed budget includes the addition of an assistant principal position. It'll be the first assistant principal position at the school, and we'll be converting our dean of students position to an assistant principal as well. So we'll have 2 assistant principals. We're going to add a vocational aide. We're going to add an intern to our IT department. And the big highlight is we're finally doing a one-to-one initiative for our student technology devices and associated software. That'll be a Google Chromebook device that every student will get. We'll have about 1,200 Google Chromebooks that we'll purchase, and we'll have 300 separate Google Chromebooks just for testing. It'll include our wage increases in accordance with our CBAs and an increased cost for transportation. We had to go out to bid. It's the first time in 5 years that we went out to bid, so those costs went up significantly. And 8% increase in our health insurance premiums. First time in a long time for that as well. We'll continue to use SOA funds to provide significant professional development to all our staff, especially programs focused on social emotional learning, our English learners, and chronic absenteeism. And we'll use the SOA funds to provide programs to meet the needs of our most vulnerable groups to close the achievement gap. We just submitted our new SOA plan, 3-year plan, yesterday. It was due April 1st. The first 3 years sunset, so we put together a comprehensive SOA and submitted that yesterday to the state. It'll also include professional grounds contract for our fields. Our fields are the original fields, 50 years old. They weren't redone during the renovation. We are seeing significant traffic on those fields. We just had a master plan update. There was one done in 2017. We updated that. Our fields currently see over 4 times the recommended daily use due to all the sports programs on that. The professional grounds contract will alleviate some of that and take some of the burden off, but what needs to be done is the addition of more multi-purpose fields or convert our game field into a synthetic turf field. It can take a lot more. The synthetic turf field alone would be $2.9 million, and to do everything and add the correct number of multi-purpose fields and fields would be closer to $9 million on that. So we just got that report. We're looking at unique or alternative funding so that we don't have to come to the towns. I know there's not an appetite to add that to the budget, so it's not included in this, but with that study, we can move forward and start looking at different alternatives for that. The FY25 freshman seat allocation is broken out on slide 11. You can see our 10 towns. It's based off the capital population. We have a total capital population of 17,747. Auburn has 2,693, which equates to 15.17% of our 325 total seats for freshmen. That equates to 50 seats for the town of Auburn. Just so a lot of other towns asked, we had 65 total applications from the town of Auburn, so 15 students on the wait list. Foundation enrollment for Bay Path are all the students that are enrolled from each of our 10 towns, so we have 1,243. Auburn will have 131. That's an increase of 14 students over last year, or 11.97%. Slide 13 shows the town of Auburn foundation enrollment for Auburn Public Schools as well as Bay Path for a total FY25 of 2,498, or a decrease of 41 students overall. Auburn Public Schools sees a decrease of 55, and Bay Path saw an increase of 14 students. Slide 14 shows the required local contribution. The current year required contribution was $18,294,872. Municipal revenue growth factor for Auburn is 4.16%. Preliminary required local contribution for FY25 is $19,055,939. Excess shortfall local effort equates to $182,949. for a total required contribution FY25 of $19,238,888. Town of Auburn comprises $32,465,114 for the foundation budget, or 92.31%, and Bay Path equates to $2,706,356, or 7.69%. Slide 15 is the total required contribution of $19,238,888. This amount is spread among the districts, so you can see the percentages again. And down the bottom, you can see that Bay Path FY25 required contribution is $1,480,384, or an increase of $227,219 over last year. Slide 16 is school attending children report. We show a history of the school attending children. Some of our towns find that useful. Auburn had a decrease of 53 over last year, and is still in the positive for all 11 years that have been tracked. Not bad. Slide 17 shows the statement of assessments for all of our 10 towns. You can see the minimum contributions. Auburn is highlighted and at the top. So of the total $11,225,779, the minimum contribution for Auburn is $1,480,384. You can see the foundation enrollment and the ratio of 10.54, and that's used to multiply by the transportation assessment total of $154,824, which equates to $16,317. Capital population equates to 15.17%. That's used for the debt service of $1,552,023, or $235,510, for a total assessment of $1,732,211. Slide 18 just shows that all broken out and compared to last year. And you can see the minimum contribution went up $227,219, or 18.13%. Transportation went up $2,670, or 19.56%. Debt service went down $4,566, or minus almost 2%, for a total assessment of $1,732,211, or an increase of 14.95%, which equates to $225,323. I want to thank you for your continued support. And a couple announcements. We kick off our strategic planning process this weekend. It was on our website and emails went out, so we're looking at over 60 people, stakeholders from across all, parents, teachers, industry advisors, and we're looking at putting together a comprehensive plan for the next 3 years on that. And also, in your support, I have the number of projects that were done for Auburn. We had a culinary arts, prepared sandwiches, salads, desserts, and provided plates, cups, and utensils for the town of Auburn. They prepared cookie platters for the town of Auburn. 3 residents took use of an automotive collision department. 24 residents took use of our automotive technology department. 5 residents had projects done in cabinet making, and 2 had graphic communication projects, for a total of 36 jobs at the school. And I would encourage you to check out our new website. Our students in programming web dev put that together, so that was a cost savings of over $100,000 if we went out for that. Our students put it together, and there's a wonderful video on there that shows all the wonderful things that we do. Any questions?
I guess I'll just start, so thank you for coming. I know, this is a very complicated budget, and I think that's where the basis of the questions, and I don't know if yourself or the business manager wants to kind of give an overview as to how these numbers come to be, some are legislative, and, there's not a lot of, I'm sure that's where the bulk of the questions are going to come from, and certainly while we can wait for the questions to come about, we've got a couple new members of our committees that may not have heard exactly. You may just have to come up so they can hear you up at the microphone.
So the vast majority of the budget is dictated by the state. So the state says, you have to provide a free and fair education to all students. And they have this complex formula where they plug in certain amounts of money for the different things the school does, administration, facilities, teachers, et cetera, et cetera. And then they charge a certain amount based on whether it's a kindergartner, a first to sixth grader, a junior high student, a high school student, or a vocational student. And they tend to be, other than high needs special ed, they tend to be the most expensive students, because a vocational school is expensive to run with all the machinery, the equipment, the utilities, the relatively low teacher to student ratios, et cetera. So that's where that minimum required contribution comes from. The state looks at it and says, okay, you have to spend this much money. We're going to give you a certain amount, and we're going to expect you to come up with a certain amount, and it's going to be shared. Back when they did ed reform in the 90s, they said that no town would ever have to contribute more than 82.5% of their budget. The state would always kick in a minimum of 17.5. Now, some places, very small rural districts, your poor city, your more economically disadvantaged cities contribute a lot less than that. In the cases of 1 or 2 of the cities, I think as low as maybe 10 to 15%, and the state kicks in the rest. A lot of the suburbs, particularly in central Mass, have slowly seen their state aid decrease. I know that the town I live in has watched it drop from almost a 40% contribution to from the state to about 22%. So we're rapidly heading towards our maximum contribution of 82.5, and the state's heading towards their minimum contribution of 17.5. So that's, again, where the majority of it comes from. You heard Mr. Brenner mention the municipal revenue growth factor. So one of the things the state's looking at in determining how much money you have to provide is, number one, your total valuation for all your properties, and they also look at income. So what's the, and they get this information from the Department of Revenue. So what is your per capita income, what's the average household income, et cetera. And that's all used to help them determine what they believe makes sense for you to provide towards the education. So that's kind of, we have to spend that money, and then it's up to us to look at what goes on in the building and how it's going to be allocated. Not surprisingly, a large amount of it, of course, is our staff. And then again, what's interesting is, as a general rule, I don't have the exact numbers for us right now, but generally you'll see in municipal districts about 80% of your cost is staff. Vocational schools runs a little bit lower than that. It runs closer to 70 to 75%, and that's because the increase is in equipment, large capital, and utilities, because it costs a lot to run all that stuff. So I hope that answers your question.
People have questions as to how these?
I have a few, but I could do any of my, okay. First of all, I want to thank you for, last year I asked for page numbers, and it seems like we get these presentations and it doesn't work, and I see here this evening, and as you went over this, you gave us page numbers. And I don't know that, I just can't thank you enough, because not that it's going to lessen the amount of time we speak, but it's going to make it very easy to move through the slides and make sure that we're concise. So I can't thank you enough. Just putting that simple fix in there, I really appreciated. You used the term minimum spending versus required net spending. And I'm just trying to get an idea if they're one and the same or they represent two different types of numbers. Because I see very clearly where minimum spending is on page 3. It's in the middle, it's a minimum contribution, but then there is another area that says required net school spending. So I know minimum is required, and I know required is required, so I'm trying to understand the difference.
The net school spending number is the total amount that we have to spend on certain categories, which is why your transportation and your debt service are listed separately. They're not part of the net school spending.
So it eliminates transportation and debt.
Correct. Okay, now, I'm going to qualify that. It eliminates the transportation getting the students to school from their homes and from school back to their homes. Transportation for athletics, and in our case, shop transportation. So when the students are doing the house build and they're going back and forth to that site every day, or let's say they were doing a project here in Auburn, any transportation to get them from the school to here and then from here back to the school, that is part of net school spending. So I just want to clarify those two things. The minimum local required contribution is the amount that each one of the 10 towns has to provide towards that net school spending budget. And again, that is net of home to school transportation and net of debt service. Okay, or capital.
Thank you. My next question is between the slides on page 5 and 7. You mentioned in the financial information that assessment has been reduced by $600,000. And being the finance geek that I am, I always catch the same number on another page. So I noticed on page 7 that the Transportation Reimbursement Fund was $600,000 and that it was bolded, unlike anything else in the column. So I was trying to understand if there was, I understand the total out to the right is $2,063,000, and I understand the combined assessment, but are we to believe then, if I were to go back at last year, that that transportation reimbursement fund would have been around 1.2 or 3 million?
No. So
I'm trying to understand.
right, no problem. So the reason it's bolded is we kind of like to let you know that we were good stewards and we were able to put some money away to be used for the following year. So what that transportation reimbursement fund is once upon a time, when the state gave us money for transportation, if we didn't use it all, we had to give it back. They didn't let us keep it. And they said, well, we'll tell you what, we're going to let you put into a fund that you're going to call the Regional Transportation Reimbursement Fund, but you have to use it within 2 years. And so ideally the next fiscal year, but they've also allowed it to maybe bleed into a following year. So that represents the difference between how much they gave you versus how much you had budgeted that they were going to give you. And in a good year, there is extra. This year, there was a lot extra because we had been living with between 50 and 70% reimbursement compared to the 100% they promised us all 50 years ago. And then last year, they said, oh, we're going to go up to about 80, 82%. And for the coming year, they've promised us well, they've said they're going to do 90, but the cherry sheet lists 80%. Okay, so the number that they gave us, that number that you see, represents an 80% reimbursement of this year's expenses, okay, that we'll get, or I'm sorry, for next year's expenses. So the number will change year to year, but it represents the difference.
Sure. I think the reason why I want to point it out is because when you minimize a presentation to this level, I was sort of surprised in reading with pages 3, where the chapter 70 had increased almost 250,000, 230 plus, and then the minimum contribution. But then when I got to 5 and I saw another savings of 600,000 and they almost netted, I was like, why are we paying more money again? So
Right.
I understand now, but that was,
Yeah.
I wanted you to understand the purpose of the question.
Okay, fair enough.
I sort of netted it in my head and didn't come up with the number I wanted to.
Right.
My next question is, could you just explain a little bit about either succession planning or why you feel the need for 2 assistant principals in stating that you're adding 1?
Okay, I'm going to defer to Mr. Brenner on that.
Sure.
Sure. Currently, we don't have any assistant principals. We have a dean of students. Going to an assistant principal position builds capacity in that position, and with 1,243 students, we see a need for an additional assistant principal with the increase in social, emotional, and disciplinary actions that are happening on that. So it's equivalent to what we've seen in our colleagues out there in terms of assistant principals.
So you've determined there's definitely a need. Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate that. And I guess my last question is, and I appreciate when you were talking about the grounds and the fields and the master plan and your commitment to find alternative funding, my last question just sort of goes around the 1.55 million, the 1.5 million that we're doing for debt and the shared debt. How much longer is that debt out there for that's aligned with?
30?
Is that a 30-year?
Total was 30, we're 10 years in.
So you're
20.
you're a third of the way through. You've got 20 more years.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Good.
Additional questions? Just one for myself for clarification. So when we see the percentage increase over last year's, it's the number that jumps out at us, especially in this year that's very tight all around. I think the percentage increase here is 14.95%. The Auburn Public Schools came in, their request was 5.63. Their approved number was 4.5%. So can you just explain exactly where Auburn is seeing that increase? I understand there's requirements and where we have to be, but to explain to taxpayers who may say you approved a 4.5% increase for the Auburn Public Schools and then you approved a 14.95% increase for Bay Path, or recommended, rather.
I think it's twofold. There's, was there 14 additional students enrolled? So there's 14 additional students, and the municipal revenue growth factor increase in the required minimum contribution on that is where it's coming from.
I'm sorry, through the chair, I did have one more question. You reminded me. I just wanted to point out, I had the privilege of sitting here on the Finance Committee years ago, and I've had some other experiences, and lately it seems like, we have to put a budget together, and we have a fiscal commitment to the town and so forth to get it settled. And it seems these last couple of years, and not necessarily Bay Path, but in certain areas, we get an estimated value, and then the fiscal year closes out. What is it that's changed that these aren't actual numbers at this stage of the budget season? Because technically, we could approve this as a number, and you could come back after July 1st and say the assessment's gone up. So I'm just trying to understand that.
Right. So you're right. In theory, if the budget that goes through the Senate and the House and ultimately gets approved changes the minimum local requirements for any reason, then yes, you could see a change in your assessments. So far, in my experience, I've only been at this 3 to 4 years, I have not seen that happen. I have seen our school choice number change, and that makes life kind of interesting. And that's really the only thing that's changed for the most part. We have not had to modify our assessments, at least in the last 3 to 4 years, because of a change in what the state has done with the budget. We have had to make changes to our line items, but they're minor. They've been minor changes. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
I do have a question. So you brought up school choice, and I had mentioned to our superintendent my questions about school choice coming to Auburn. Can you explain what school choice looks like for a regional vocational program?
So it's not your typical school choice, so no students from out of district school choice into Bay Path. Our school choice is the reverse. It's students who live in one of our 10 communities that attend a vocational school elsewhere. So we pay the Chapter 74 money for them. So ours is a reduction, that's why it's out of our operating budget of $296,000. It's about 56 students?
Yeah.
Who live in our towns and attend. A good example would be if a student lived in Southbridge and the family school choiced them to Tantascwa in middle school. And now they're at Tantascwa student and they choose to go on to the high school and enroll in their vocational program, which they have. That would be a school choice that the 74 money would come from us to Tantascwa. And it's not just that. We do have students. We had one last year in Fall River. I don't know how that happens, but the family was driving them down there. Worcester, yeah,
Yeah. Worcester and Tantascwa are the two largest.
largest for us.
And just an aside, as before we get to our next budget, which is always a beloved one here, the Norfolk Agricultural. Any chance down the road your veterinary program expands so that we could have the agricultural program be part of our Bay Path assessments and not this additional cost?
We are exploring agricultural programming. Right now in our current building, it's just not feasible. We're at capacity, but we're looking at alternative locations to do that as well. So we're working very preliminary, but very hopeful that, we could add some agricultural programs. If there's to be agricultural in Central Mass, I believe it should be in Charlton at the Bay Path. We have the facilities, we can expand upon that, but yeah, we're in the preliminary stages, and it looks hopeful, so.
That's great. That's great news.
Get rid of that transportation cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to draw a distinction between the assessment itself at 14.95 and the budgetary growth at a rate of 3.90. So current year to FY '25, overall budget, their budget is up 3.9%. The fact that our assessment is up is driven by the fact that we have additional 14 students, and it's that municipal growth factor. So I think when you look at the level of growth as compared to our Auburn Public School System, it's very similar. So I think they're experiencing the same needs that our school system is seeing, and it's not out of line with what we're seeing in central Massachusetts.
So then that begs the question that on page 12, where it says percent change, you have the town of Auburn at 11.97. You said that 65 people applied, 15 are on hold. You've got 50 that you've accepted. At 89%, why wouldn't you allow a larger percentage of Auburn to come in if you're not at 100?
I don't think I followed that. The seat allocation is based on the capital population, so we only have a total of 325 seats. If you look at the front on page, hold on.
Yep, the 11.
Page 11, right. So our total
So your
capital.
ratio is at 100%?
Yep. So
Okay.
based on our district agreement, it's based on capital population. So with a total capital population of 17,747, Auburn is 15.17% of that. So multiply that by 325, and that's 50 seats.
Now I get it.
We have, all right, for the 325, we have just under 700 applications. So,
No, we're very fortunate between Bay Path and the Auburn Public Schools to have, for our students to have the opportunities and the options.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Additional questions while we, no? Okay.
I'm just thrilled that they put page numbers on it, made my whole budget season.
Easy to please.
You set the bar high for the future. So the Bay Path budget for FY '24 was $1,506,889. This year, they requested $1,732,211, which was the recommendation of the town manager, which did have an increase of $225,322, or 14.95%, which we discussed how that percentage came to be.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out this evening.
To approve or to recommend?
I'm sorry.
Motion to recommend.
We'll amend that to a recommend in a,
Absolutely.
okay, amended.
Thanks, Steve.
Good catch, Steve. The next one is the Norfolk Agricultural. Discuss how we end up with this number this year?
Has this number been amended? So we did get a communication from the Auburn school system, which currently, there is one application being considered for an additional student.
We do have a representative of the school system if you really want to.
Do you know the details on that, Beth?
I don't think we have, well, actually, we did sign some prior commitment papers on that, so I think.
So it was my understanding we weren't going to hear about whether or not that individual was going to be accepted until the mid to late April, so we haven't heard yet. So the number coming in may be shy, and it may have to be amended. We didn't want to count that individual as enrolled until we got confirmation, so more likely than not, we're going to have to revisit this number. I think the number as it stands right now, because we had to do a transfer most recently to increase the budget, may even be shy by that value. So this is something we may have to consider prior to town meeting, maybe the night of town meeting.
Motion to defer this budget to town meeting.
Okay. While we have just a moment, just with two new members, can you just explain, I would never have known what agricultural was and how I alluded to it via Bay Path, but can you just explain why we're sending students out to Norfolk?
Well, because the trade that this individual is seeking isn't offered by Bay Path, so they have to go to another vocational school system that does offer that. As a result of that, we're required to transport that student if the student is accepted. So not only are we paying the tuition costs, we're paying the transportation costs as well. When we have multiple students, and we did at Norfolk for a period of time, I think there was a shared arrangement on the transportation in an effort to minimize that cost. So that's what we would attempt to do. If the second student is enrolled, because we have one there already. And Dr. Chamberlain, do you know if that student is currently a sophomore or going into the junior? I don't know. Okay.
Just a question, so the transportation costs, all these transportation costs are super expensive, but do we ever get to a point, say the student that we may be moving into their, junior, senior year, when they get licenses and whatnot, do we find out and then are not obligated for the transportation portion any longer, or for instance, a parent worked out that way and was choosing to drive them on a daily basis, or do we always factor in the transportation regardless of whether it's utilized?
I think we have to factor it in, and we can't make that choice for the student, just because they have that license, we can't say not drive.
No, I understand that, but if they chose to not to elect to utilize, they, for instance, any other student,
Decided to drive, yeah.
any other student that doesn't sign up for a bus, we wouldn't have to contract a bus that we weren't.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't think, but I do believe, I recall that we are obligated, even if the individual travels on their own, that we have to pick up the traveling expenses for the individual to get to school.
But that's mileage,
Yeah, right.
yeah, which is a lot different than, yeah.
Drivers and vehicles, and yes.
Does the transportation get coordinated with the other 10 towns at all? Like if there's, multiple towns sending multiple kids to Norfolk? Is there any kind of coordination, or
We
does
have tried to do that. When it works, we do that, yes.
If I could, the student that's attending right now is going to be going into the 11th grade next school year.
Thank you.
So we had a motion to defer this one to the,
Finance Committee meeting prior to town meeting. So we have,
be acceptable, is that right?
I think because this is part of a warrant article that you're going to take a position on tonight under the warrant, I would approve it as presented, as recommended, with the understanding that we may ask for an amendment. And we can always amend it in the fall, too, so
I will withdraw my motion, but I have no desire to make another one.
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Second. And a second? All in favor?
Opposed?
Opposed? We have one opposed? Okay. Okay.
Huh? Way to go, team.
So we have the reserve fund next, which is number 132. Karen, did you want to address anything on the reserve funds?
The reserve fund is being level funded from fiscal year 2024.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, quite honestly, this is an area that I would, if we had the funds, I would like to increase, only because I think of some of the transfers that you've addressed over the past several months as a result of increasing costs. I would like to have ultimately that value represent 1% of the total general fund operating budget, which would be somewhere around $750,000. And we know we're not going to get there overnight. But certainly, I think you understand the magnitude of the transfers that you already voted for fleet, for overtime, and it creates a buffer for snow and ice. Luckily, we've had a good year for snow and ice. What tonight will bring, we don't know. But there are years that we've transferred in excess of $200,000 to relieve a snow and ice deficit. And we try to address that by increasing snow and ice, too. We try to work it from both ends. I moved money out of this, made a recommendation to move money out of the salary and wage reserve account, reduce that, but I put that back into the regular reserve account only because there's there's increase in costs that we have to deal with and I don't see it stopping. And I see right now, we're seeing motor vehicle fuel go up, and that's a volatile item. We know our fleet is a volatile consideration, and there are other costs too that we're trying to cope with. So if I can, I'd like to make an adjustment at the fall town meeting that would increase that, but right now we just don't have the resources to do it.
Questions relative to reserve?
Mine's just housekeeping. Why is the utility reserve there? Did it just print out? Because it hasn't been
So
funded?
we had a utility reserve several years ago. We could actually take that out. I'm trying to remember, I think because of escalating electrical costs and things of that nature. So we set up a reserve for that. That would require the finance committee to examine that, to analyze that, and make a decision whether or not that was an appropriate transfer. So really, I think it was left there because the history probably just fell off, and we should clean it up and just remove it.
That's it. Any additional questions?
Which we will do before this goes to print. We'll remove it.
Thank you. Motion approved?
Second.
Motion to recommend.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
General services.
199.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, CFO, do you have any?
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we take a snapshot in time when we estimate these numbers. So certainly, there are a couple of items that may fluctuate during the year. We know what our electricity costs are because we're into a multi-year contract. So that estimate is basically resulting from the actuals that we've paid year to date. So that's extrapolated out. We were paying, under our old agreement, 23 cents per kilowatt hour. We're now paying 14 cents. So as you can see, that's going to result in a savings, provided our usage remains constant. Other areas that we are concerned about is gas and motor vehicles. So that was based on current price with a slight buffer in there. But these are the items that we may want to reconsider in the fall, one way or another, all depending on cost and all depending on usage. And our insurance and bonds, that goes up every year, quite honestly. That's something we keep an eye on. We believe that will be adequate. Certainly, our premiums are going up for our coverage on workers' compensation, on IOD. Those are costs we try to control by looking at various deductibles, various other options that may be associated with that coverage. So right at this point, we believe the $12,000 reduction overall is adequate to meet our current needs as we see them today. But certainly, if there are any changes, we'll certainly bring this back and revisit it at the fall.
On the larger insurance items, do we encumber it in prompt pay to take advantage of any discount or prompt cash payment to keep that from having to pay out in installments? Great.
Yes, we do. We take advantage, for instance, if you recall, if we pay our retirement assessment, we get like an $80,000 discount.
Right.
We take advantage of that.
Perfect, great.
This is honestly just because I feel like I probably asked this earlier. The streetlights line item, is that for like maintenance, supply, like bulbs? Like why is that one?
So we converted to LED lights. So the level of maintenance has significantly diminished because the life expectancy of the LED is greater than the old halogen type bulbs that we use. And not only that, but they're newer devices. So if for whatever reason a pole is taken down and we have to replace, in most cases, the insurance company will cover that, whoever was at fault for hitting the pole. So we chase those claims down and get reimbursed for that. We do have an inventory, I believe, of 10 replacements that we keep at 10, and that's funded through that account as well.
The reason I'm asking is just, we're like, 20% higher than the three-year rolling average. Last year was even higher than that. And, I know we're talking about LEDs being lower cost, but like, I'm assuming we're not still swapping out halogens for LEDs, which means you would think that that cost would have either leveled off or gone down.
Even though LED is more efficient and less costly, you gotta remember, the electricity cost is going up as well.
But that's
So,
also
yeah,
associated with
yeah,
running those like the
Yes.
electricity.
Yeah.
That was part of my question. Great.
I had a question. Last week, we were talking about electricity rates, and you brought it up again today. And when we got the, whatever it is, the 14 cents that you negotiated, is that a town-by-town thing, or is that something that the
Town by
state
town.
is negotiating? Is there any negotiating on the infrastructure, or is it just the supply that gets
Just
negotiated?
a supply. Yeah.
Additional questions on general services?
Motion to approve, or motion to recommend?
Second.
Actually, let me just read in the request, and then I'd be happy to take your motion.
This is not my best meeting.
Department FY '24, it was $1,702,889. Department's request this year, $1,690,552, same as the town manager's, which was less by $12,337. And we have a motion to recommend.
And a second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And next up, Auburn Youth Commission. I see we have some representatives from the Auburn Youth Commission, as well as some support from the Auburn Public Schools as well, so.
Yeah, there we go.
Sally, you're not going to get up there and get on camera?
Sally says she'll come up if there's any questions as to what's going on for the budget, but
Let me just, before you get going, let me find a spot here. 542, thank you.
how you doing? Yeah. Norman Flash, I'm the chairman of the Auburn Youth Commission, and I just want to come. I had a meeting with Ed, and we talked about our budget coming up this year, and there is a significant increase, but that is to fund a new position that has been hired by Sally, and which will help overall with all the general services that they provide. We have contracted services that the Auburn Youth and Families provides to the town at the, try to go at the cost of the budget. But Sally was showing me, right now, they're already 135 hours over the contracted hours and stuff, and that's still with April, May, and June to go. So, that just because there's a number of significant hours to do the counseling, that doesn't mean the need goes away, and they're not going to turn people away once it goes through it. In the past, we've always tried to address and increase our budget, by the 2%, 2.5% that we can. This year, because of the new position, we're just going to go with the recommended amount for the budget so that they can get the new person in, and that will help with it. And then hopefully maybe the number of hours, I don't think they're going to go down, but we'll come back next year and try to address the shortfall on what we do for the contracted services. And that's where we stand for this year. So I appreciate, and Sally appreciates, the extra money to get the extra position there in the building. They've been short on that position for quite a while now, and that will help significantly with what they provide, not only to the town, but to the general public. 90% of which are town members, so town residents. So I just wanted to thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for the budget for this year. Other than that, if you got questions, Sally's your girl.
Sally, could you just come up for a moment just to, so we have a couple new members, and as I like to, anybody that's watching from home to understand, Auburn Youth and Family Services is the front-facing component of the Youth Commission. Youth Commission is the town side. Can you just sort of explain your relationship, and as well as your relationship with the Auburn Public Schools, and beyond the counseling, the services that your organization provides?
Well, Auburn Youth and Family Services has been in the community for a long time now. We're a private nonprofit organization.
organization, but we work in collaboration with a lot of partners, including the town. The school is a huge partner. We have counselors in, I would happy to say, all the schools now. We've done some new things this year with providing some groups at Bryn Mawr and some groups at Swiss. Some of them happen after school, some of them happen during the day. It's just, you know, we work together for the benefit of all the community. The schools provide us, it's a wonderful partnership, but they do a lot of food drives for us and help us at Christmas time with presents and donate clothing, and so it's a wonderful partnership. But the new position is primarily put in place to handle the unmet mental health needs of the Auburn community. We have about 50 people on a wait list, all Auburn residents, and we've been working very hard to strengthen our clinical component so we can meet that unmet need. And we thank you very much for, you know, recommending that money so that we can do that. The town does so many things for us too. It's been a wonderful relationship. Just a great place.
Any questions for Sally?
I just had two. One, Sally, it's really great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
And I just want to mention for the people on the board or for people out there that we, as a town, have been very blessed to have you at the forefront of that community center for the decades that we have and the extreme, tremendous work that you continue to do. I just wanted to inquire about the ARPA money. Is it still going in that direction, or has everything been exhausted, or is there still, did it go into this year, next year, separate from this? But I know you've put the money to really good use. I'm just wondering if you're still able, if we divvied it out over a few years, and if it's still going.
So we voted $180,000, made a 3-year commitment to AYFS, $60,000 for year. There's one more year.
One more year.
In FY '25 due, so that's good news.
It's been a blessing for us. We've really used that to help with food insecurity, you know, helping people that stay in their homes. We've dealt with homeless issues and things like that, doing some informal counseling around anxiety and depression, and it's been a godsend. It really, I can't thank you enough for that.
And also, we are currently having discussions about the use of some of our opioid settlement funds that we would like to program through AYFS to get some educational and some awareness out there to our youth. So that's something that we will continue to have the discussions on that may allow for some additional flexibility for that new position. I was happy to announce at the annual fall breakfast meeting that we made a commitment to AYFS by funding an additional $75,000 in the current year that we're in, that allowed them to go out and get a full-time clinician. And so there has been a delay in that hiring, which will carry that position, that 75 will carry through a little longer. But that's something we're gonna have to revisit in the future coming years as to how we can supplement that 75 to get the commitment and honor that $100,000 position. So unfortunately, things turned south pretty quickly. We weren't anticipating that. We were hoping to make an adjustment, an additional adjustment to AYFS. And with some luck, we may be able to do that in the fall, but right now, and I want to appreciate the cooperation of both Sally and Norm for understanding, because I think they realize that we are facing a difficult year, but it's something that we're committed to revisiting.
Thank you so much for your support.
I guess I would just, I like the thought process by utilizing some of the opioid settlement. I would say that, I've said in the past too, that your efforts out of Auburn Youth and Family Services impact so many budgets, the public schools, the police, all the services that, you know, if these kids weren't getting the resources through your efforts would fall as an additional burden to the schools. It would fall for additional calls for service for police and fire. So your efforts are there, and I would suggest that that money is well spent in that a lot of these kids who have certain struggles may look towards illicit drugs to satisfy or quell whatever's, you know, ailing them. So I think that would be a great use of the money, and I think certainly more than justified through, those that support those programs. And the other thing, you've got an event coming up, and feel free, I know we've got, there must be at least 4 or 5 people watching at home. If you want to support your event.
I've been watching these meetings at home, too, from Clinton.
There's only three or four then, 'cause-
Yes, we have our biggest event this year as our casino night, and that's on Friday, April 5th, up at the Auburn Lodge at Elks. And we have all sorts of, those of you that like roulette games, and we have all sorts of celebrity dealers. I do believe some of your selectmen are on the celebrity dealers, as well as the police, the fire. I think the whole community is coming, so we're really blessed with a lot of support. But it is our biggest fundraiser, and it's a lot of fun. We have food and raffles, and it's a really great night. People fight over their dollars at the end to spend on prizes, and we have a wonderful committee that put that all together. They work so hard. So if you're around on Friday, you should really come.
Any additional questions? Okay.
I will first just say, I think it's incredible the amount of work you guys do with such a tight budget, and then I will make a motion and recommend that budget.
So,
Second.
the FY '24 was $219,012. Department had requested $244,012. The town manager's recommendation was $219,012. And we have a motion to recommend on that amount and a second. All in favor? Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Pensions and benefits.
9:10.
9:10, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to highlight on some of the larger ones, the group insurance, we got our renewal rate, and it came in at roughly about 8%. Because we have a healthy trust, we have roughly $11 million in our self-insured trust. We're using some of that to dilute the rate of increase, as well as potentially offer some premium holidays to our employees who share in that trust. That's part of their money, and they're due some premium holidays as a result to contain costs as well. So it's about a $100,000 reduction. As you can see in FY '23, we spent 7.9, so the appropriation is a little stronger than what the actual was, which created a little buffer in the current fiscal year. In addition to that, the Worcester Regional Retirement, it is what it is, that they do an actuarial, we receive an assessment, although if you look at the footnote at the bottom of the page, we're taking advantage of an $82,000 savings by paying that on July 1. Medicare, we're taking the actual and we're multiplying that by a level of COLA that our collective bargaining groups have, so we believe that amount to be adequate. And our unemployment comp has been running strong, but we're anticipating that's going to fall off. I'm going to tell you, we're going to exceed the 50 that, or the 30 that's been appropriate. I think a transfer was already done for that, right, Karen? On unemployment comp?
Yes, it was done mostly for the school.
So I think there was a transfer of 25. We had discussions with Dr. Chamberlain on the individuals that are drawing on unemployment comp. We're challenging cases that we believe are not eligible for unemployment comp. In most cases, I can tell you that unemployment comp is going to favor the unemployed and not the employer. But we do our best to try to contain costs as best we can. And that's basically it.
Questions on pensions and benefits?
Yeah, I got like a million questions.
Sorry.
Because I'm a newbie. So Medicare is for employees that are over 65? How does, I'm not sure how all of this
So
fits together.
Medicare is the employer share of gross wages, 1.45% we have to contribute.
It's like a standard withdrawal. That makes more sense. Okay.
The Medicare penalty are those individuals who are over 65, who are eligible for, this goes back years ago when it was required to transition over to the Medicare. Some individuals who were over 65 were paying a penalty for that.
It's a forced penalty that got put back on the employer for not being able to move them over to Medicare when they should have, or at least have them apply. So it's a forced penalty.
Right.
And the person who it's regarding doesn't have to absorb that penalty, the employer has to. And it exists until they pass away.
Right, so that continues to go down as people fall off, so to speak.
Sure.
And the Worcester County Retirement Plan, that would, how does, so, because you have is that the pension that people receive when they're retired? This is, I'm like, I got, this
So
I'm kind of just totally lost on how
there's
this all
a
fits
number of factors that drive that assessment. One, when someone retires, they have an annuity, their annuity pays a portion of their pension, and then the employer pays a portion of that as well. But they do an actuarial on life expectancy of those in the retirement pool, and they calculate the benefit based upon that actuarial. And that is part of what the employer pays in to meet that.
So we're using this to purchase the annuity? Is that an accurate description?
No, it's in addition.
It's in addition
yeah.
to the annuity. Okay. And then the premium health holidays is because you've paid out less than you expected to the group. You've made fewer claims than you've expected against the insurance?
No, so how that works is, how our health insurance works is, the town employees, school's a little different, they're bi-weekly, but we pay over a 48 pay period, 48 weeks. Every fifth week, the deduction is shut off, so our premium is driven over a 48-week period. In order to minimize and have the trust absorb, say, 2 premium holidays, we shut the deduction off for another 2 weeks, and the trust pays for that, for the employer and the employee for those 2 weeks.
So the employees get a slightly bigger paycheck
Yes.
for 2 weeks of the
Yes.
year? Kind of like when there's a fifth week and
Yes,
kind of a thing.
exactly.
Okay, I got you. I'm good.
You sure? No?
No, I'm sure, we could talk for hours.
Good questions.
It's such a big area, but I'm good.
No, it is. It's, I mean, it's a big amount, and it's certainly, complicated. And I would just say, as we've talked about the HR, and we had to make some adjustments in the HR, this stuff is so complicated, and timelines, and getting people on the right plans, and, we talk about unemployment compensation and, workman's comp claims, like, in the previous stuff, like, this is the stuff where I really, at some point, hopefully, personally, that we get that HR position back and continue to professionalize that office so we will see savings, I believe.
And I want to underscore the importance of our obligation to OPEB, too. That's why OPEB is in
Well,
place.
you usually move that to the fall. I
Yeah.
think in the past, you've said, let's see where the numbers fall on June
Right.
30th, and then we'll fund that in the fall.
Right. So, just to highlight why OPEB is so important, just look at the level of commitment or increase on your healthcare insurance. As these costs continue to rise, it's going to erode what we can spend on general fund operating budget. So your fixed costs for retirement, for health insurance is eroding what we'd like to apply towards maintaining services here in town. By feeding OPEB and getting a return on OPEB, at some point, you'll be able to take some of that return on OPEB and apply it towards your health insurance increase. So you try to minimize it that way. But we don't want to start taking from OPEB until we have a healthy balance in them, and we're getting a substantial return. Even if you use that ROI on your investment on OPEB to offset your health insurance costs, it's a big chunk that you're trying to minimize that increase.
On the OPEBs, since we had to slow it for a little bit, but our contributions have been healthy, and not to be critical of any of our partners, but we heard the number that Bay Path is putting towards OPEB compared to what are we back to, 500?
So we've been doing 500, and we also are, through an employee, through our collective bargaining agreements, the employees are contributing 2%, in some cases, up to 2% of their gross pay goes into OPEB. So not only do we have the $500,000 annual, but we probably have about $100,000 of employee contributions that's going in as well.
And where are we seeing where are the benefits starting to come from that? Where are we starting to see as that account gains? I know it's not even close to what they
So the unfunded liability, I think at the last actuarial was, and it may show up on the financial statements. By the way, we'll get you a copy of the audit results that were presented to the board at the last meeting. I think our unfunded liability in the financial statements was 59 million. I think our OPEB is somewhere around 8 million. We're contributing $500,000 a year. We're getting a good return on our investments now, so that's only going to help build that account. But we got to stay on track. We got to continue to put 500 in.
It's also important to recognize that the market hasn't been well over the last few years, and not only our OPEB, but many OPEBs have suffered.
Exactly.
Additional questions relative to this one? So FY '24, it was $13,839,743. Department request this year was $14,689,049. Town manager's recommendation is $14,608,362, an increase of $768,618.50, or 5.55%. Do we have a motion?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
A motion to recommend and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. We had one correction on a DPW budget that we had already recommended. It was in your packets from this evening. Should have a highlight at the way everybody has that one. What were we looking at for corrections?
So, a good catch by Sharon. When she was plugging in the action of the Finance Committee, it was off by, what, $1,000? $1,000. So apparently, the department during its request added a line item for $1,000. I don't know which one it was, but didn't adjust the formula to reflect that additional line.
It was in tools.
Facilities management.
Facility management.
Yeah, the next page.
Oh, it's on the next page?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So the amount, the total amount for the DPW increased by $1,000. So we don't need to rescind anything, we just take a motion to accept?
I would vote the new number.
Can I just ask for clarification? Because I saw the number that's in our budget book is $7,311,512. And this,
I think we had an amended.
we had an amendment? Okay.
Yeah, we added
Great.
back some.
Oh, because of the celebration accounts.
Yes, we had.
With the July, Memorial Day, yep.
So the amended amount recommendation of the town manager was $7,323,012. That is a corrected from the one we recommended previously. Do we have a motion to recommend that?
I move to recommend the corrected town manager request.
Second.
A motion and a second to recommend the amended amount. All in favor? Aye. Good. The CIP. Okay, how do we typically recommend the total, or?
Yeah, we usually just recommend the total, but
866,427?
just a point of clarification, I didn't switch anything out, but we had a $15,000 change, didn't we? We ended up moving money.
On the CIP?
Yeah,
For the library.
for the library. And I'm wondering if that's in this total up here.
Oh, because of Steve's, I think Steve had a correction, didn't he?
I think Patrick's referring, wasn't there a reduction
Correct.
for library of 15,000?
That is correct.
So therefore, it actually wouldn't be the 3,000,002 that's on this page. I just want to make sure that we do the right number.
Or, did you say 3.2 million?
Well, it's so we're only going to recommend up to here. We're not going to recommend all, because this is the backup.
These are future years.
Right, but
This is
They-
We
the
don't vote on
original.
these. We vote on, that's just for reference.
okay, I thought we voted on this number here, because that's, backup in here is only for this year.
No, backup's for 2025. So the CIP is different. This is 2024, 2025.
Yeah.
And then this is 6, 7, 8, 9.
No, I'm following that. I'm saying that the backup that comes with the budget is only fiscal year, whatever fiscal year the changes were made in. See, so 27?
Those are adjustments to future years, but we only vote on the current year's CIP.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes, that's correct, with the reduction of 15,000 for the library.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yes.
All right, so that is a correct number, okay.
So the 3,761,000 is the number that,
No. This, let me, Cap, 3 million.
Which one? The manager recommendation?
Yep.
3866?
Yep.
Okay.
We reduced the library, we reprogrammed from FY '25 to '26, $15,000 to update computers.
Okay, so the number I have here, did anybody have any additional questions relative to CIP? I think it was good that we did that early. We got, as people came before us, we got a better understanding of it. So tonight we have the total number. So the manager's recommendation for the CIP for this fiscal year, $3,866,427.
Motion to recommend.
second.
Motion to second, all in favor? CIP is done, so we have, does anybody need to take a quick break before we move on to warrant articles? Just throw that out there for anybody.
I'm good. You good?
I'm all right.
You could take a bunch of them together, like standard after this one.
Circle which one they are. So Mike, which one do I have to read in?
So we don't vote on Article 1.
No.
Do we typically recommend Article 2?
It's the salary and compensation probably.
I thought we did.
It all, yeah, I've seen it recommended, I've seen it deferred, I've seen it,
So if you have the agenda to so our
Choices.
choices are all listed there. Sharon's graciously written them down for us, so we get them correct. But, so it's recommend for approval, not recommend approval, defer to the petitioner, or take no position at this time, make a recommendation at town meeting, so. Yeah.
I would make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 2. Or, excuse me, I think we defer on Article 1, right?
It's
So we don't even talk about
It's just a standard.
Yeah, it's just a standard, so we can,
So I'll move that we recommend approval of Article 2.
okay, let me just, so then I should be reading these in now, correct? What's the,
I'm sorry, what's that?
actually, I read these in, right, onto the record and then have them recommended, or?
We've seen it done different ways, so
It's been a long meeting, so if we're,
I move that we recommend Article 2 as written in the town meeting warrant for approval.
we have a motion to recommend approval on Article 2.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Isn't town meeting going to ask what those numbers are?
Yeah, in the
they'll be in the motion. And the only individuals that this would apply to right now is the moderator and the select board. We currently have an appointed town clerk who will be elected after the town meeting, so. Or there'll be someone, I don't want to,
We make recommendations on the articles that are from us, right? I assume. We do recommend approval of our own, articles. All right, so I move that we recommend approval of Article 3 as written in the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion on the Article 3 to recommend approval, and a second, all in favor?
Aye. I move that we recommend approval of Article 4 as written in the town warrant. This deals with capital improvement. It's essentially just what we just voted on.
We have a motion and a second on Article 4 to recommend for approval, all in favor?
Aye.
5 is pretty standard.
5 is,
Mr. Chairman, I know in the past you grouped the standard articles under one vote. You lumped them together. I don't know if that's what the board wishes to do. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 are standard articles.
I move that we take Articles 5 through 11 as one motion.
Okay, we have a motion to take
Second.
Articles 5 through 11 as one motion. I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
aye. Just for the people who are new to the committee, these are the ones that essentially allow the town administration to like conduct business and operate the town without having to ask town meeting every single time that they want to borrow funds or spend money or whatever else, so. I would move that we recommend approval of Articles 5 through 11.
We have a motion to approve Articles 5 through 11. Do we have a second? Patrick, are you there, a second on that one?
Now, George.
George is a second. You got George? Okay. So you get a better look at the recording, right? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
5 through 11.
The next 4 is school articles.
Motion to recommend Article 12.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to recommend for approval, Article 12, which is the article relative to Medicaid receipts.
School department.
For the school department.
How does the town receive Medicaid receipts?
Do you want to discuss how we get, why we have Medicaid receipts, and just briefly on this one?
It's based on some of our students with significant special needs. We get a reimbursement for that, and that goes through Medicaid. And then the town, we have to request the funding from the town.
Okay, so we have a motion,
To recommend
motion to
12.
recommend approval on Article 12, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
On Article 13, I'm just curious if we have a value yet on that?
Not yet. We normally get it end of April.
Do we want to defer that to town, take no position till town meeting? Do we usually wait on the ones that don't have a dollar
Usually
value?
we get
or-
an idea. Do we have an idea of how much it is?
So it ranges from, now that we have a greater rate of return, I think this year we had close to 20,000. Years before, it was like, when we were getting a fraction of what we're getting today, it was like 7,000, 7 to 9,000. So I'm expecting somewhere in the $20,000 range.
I mean, typically, ones that we haven't had numbers, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, we've waited till the night of the meeting and just gotten, you know, hopefully.
We can do that.
You've held that in the past.
I would move that we take no position at this time and make a recommendation at town meeting of Article 13 and 14 as written in the town meeting warrant.
We have a motion to hold off on 13 and 14 and take no position, take no position at this time, make a recommendation at the town meeting. Do I have a second on that one? Second. A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I just ask what the McKinney-Vento receipts are?
Absolutely. Dr. Chamberlain?
Dr. Chamberlain, we typically, are we going to know a value by town meeting on that?
Yes, we should.
Okay.
We should. I spoke with Cecilia today. We should have a value probably by the end of April, so before the meeting.
Okay.
Yes. That's for our homeless students. Those reimbursements we receive for that. McKinney-Vento covers our homeless population.
Is that like a nonprofit or something that,
Oh, that's funded through the state.
oh, it's just a regular, it's just a state fund with the,
Yes.
with the name on it? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Steve, did you have any questions for Dr. Chamberlain on the next one? That's school committee as well, before we make her stand up again.
Now, I'm beginning to get the drift.
These articles are fairly typical for us. They come up recurringly with a small variation in the amounts.
15, we typically get an amount.
Dr. Chamberlain, the foster care transportation one is...
Sorry.
That's the same thing. Cecilia thought we will have by the end of April, so for the meeting.
Trying to help you get your steps for today.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I've been sitting, so that's good.
Thank you. Then I would move that we take no position at this time and make a recommendation at town meeting.
Okay, we have a motion to take no position at this time on Article 15 until the night of town meeting. Do we have a second on that? Second. Second from George. All in favor? Okay. Okay, number 16.
I think we've talked about this before, but
About the Stern regular budgets.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Article 16 as written in the town meeting warrant.
Motion to recommend.
Second.
Motion and a second on Article 16 to recommend for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
It's sort of a catch-22 because it's an evaluation year, I take it, right?
Mhm.
Is Article 17 the one that you were discussing with youth
Yes,
services?
yes, I think, so when we originally got these proceeds, the Department of Revenue did not allow us to set these funds aside. They had to be recorded into the general fund until such time the stabilization account was set up at the last annual meeting. So the receipts that came in last fiscal year closed out to free cash. We're appropriating that out of free cash and putting it into an account that we're now allowed by DOR standards to set up as of this past December. So there is a warrant article that addresses that. So we want to take this 134, we want to put it into the special revenue account that allow us to expend those funds for eligible purposes as defined under the distribution of those funds for opioids related purposes. So that's what this is doing. This is taking it out of free cash and setting it aside to that new account.
This is the full amount, I assume?
Now, we also received another 29,000 or 20 that is sitting into the stabilization account, which you're going to address on the next article. That will go into that fund as well.
And I'm sorry if you have tried and I just don't get it, but, so Article 18 revokes the dedication of all revenue from the opioid settlement to the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. Is that getting rid of that account? Is it just?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's a different
So by
$29,000?
putting it into the stabilization account, any use of those funds has to be voted out by town meeting.
Okay.
The new account allows us to put the money in there without a vote at town meeting to
Okay,
expend it
so
for
this is-
purposes that,
We're asking to put the 134 into a special revenue account, which is a different account that we can spend on for whatever purposes we want to, and then we're revoking the special
stabilization account that was
okay.
established at the last annual town meeting, because we no longer need it.
Got it.
And the funds that are currently in the stabilization will revert to the special revenue. So everything will be contained in the
one account.
special revenue account.
This may not be the appropriate form, but does Article 18 effectuate that transfer? Like, I understand that this revokes the stabilization account's existence, but does it actually move the money, like, automatically into the, because you're saying it's two different amounts, right?
I think by DOR standards, it does.
Does.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That sounds great.
We got guidance from DOR on that. Yeah.
That's more than I need to know. I will move that we recommend approval of Articles 17 and 18 as written in the town meeting warrant.
Motion to recommend for approval Articles 17 and 18 as written. Do I have a second on that one?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Article 19?
Motion to recommend, we talked about this with the chief earlier.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval on Article 19 as written. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to defer to the petitioner.
On Article 20?
22.
On Articles
Second.
20, 21, and 22, I have a motion and a second to defer to the petitioner on those. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And just for you guys, we don't typically take a position on any articles that don't have like a budgetary or financial impact.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Even if it theoretically could have like impacts on revenue or whatever else, especially like zoning.
Unless it's cupcakes.
Unless it's cupcakes, in which case Patrick tries to shut the whole thing down.
Town government comes to a screeching halt.
But what about the chickens?
We are not, that one in particular, we defer to the petitioner on the, yes.
We started with chickens.
Was that all for the warrant article, Sharon?
Yes,
Anything else we need to act upon?
well, just note that
Yes,
in the minutes.
Yes.
Talk about the meeting before town meeting.
Okay. So we had one transfer that the CFO had handled and was provided to us this evening, so unless there's questions on that, we'll deem that to be approved. We had some minutes, again, unless there's any questions on the minutes, those will be listed as approved as well. Before we adjourn, just because we deferred a couple items to,
Oh, till the before.
we didn't take
town
any
meeting.
position on a couple until town meeting, so town meeting is scheduled for May 7th, is that correct? Do you anticipate that we may need to get together before any transfers or anything? Do you think before that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm supposed to say that with that much confidence.
Oh, before May 7th. Maybe not, I was thinking fiscal year end,
Oh,
sorry.
no, fiscal, we know we're going to see before fiscal year. But at a minimum, May 7th, we'll get together. Town meeting is at what time?
Town meeting's at 6.
Town meeting is at 6, so if we, again, at 5:30, that should give us time to address those ones that we deferred. Is everybody available, at least for that meeting? It's great if you can come down and sit through town meeting, but obviously we, understand not everybody can stay for the entire duration of the meeting, but. Anything addition as we
And I
wrap
just
up?
want to thank the committee for your hard work over the past X amount of weeks. We appreciate you moving this along. We knew it was going to be a difficult season, but we are going to keep our eye on the ball. I mean, things are going to change, and we will keep you up to date. And we know some of the priorities that we would like to address that we couldn't address because of the lack of flexibility, but hopefully we'll get some good news and we'll be able to make some additional recommendations.
No, thank you. I mean, we know, we sit here on Wednesdays and look at numbers that you've, as a team, prepared for us and spent a lot of time with the town department heads and make difficult decisions. So, while we'd like to see that number not as close to 2.5 as we're at, but hopefully we'll find some breathing room. And
I also want to thank the department heads for being, understanding, because they heard more no's than yeses. And at times that can be very difficult because we understand and see the need, but we can't print it. And we know we have excess levy, but there's no desire to go beyond that. It's nice to have that buffer in situations that may result in consideration for an override in lieu of the excess levy, but, that's something that we may have to consider in the future. But I want to thank you for making some tough decisions as well. It's not easy, because I know you had a sympathetic ear to those department heads that came in and made I'm thankful for that. I mean, they understand, and I guess they're willing to wait.
I mean, I think personally, when I saw that we were close to 2.5, I sort of had some angst, but then after listening to the presentations, there wasn't a lot of nice to haves. I don't think there were any nice to haves. There were difficult decisions, and largely those were pushed up against it because of increased costs for everything. So I think that's the lesson I learned out of this budget season. Was it really is, it was just the across the board economic costs of doing business that have really.
When you look at the budget and you dissect it, there's very little discretionary spending within the budget. Most of it's fixed cost. And that makes it more difficult because that's when they feel the pain. When you don't have the discretionary flexibility, then it's going to hit, real things. So we did our best to try to minimize that as best we could. And in doing so, we squeezed a little bit more out of local receipts, which gives us less future flexibility too. So we may be facing a couple of difficult years, but we go through this, and I know, Patrick, you've been in municipal government for a while. You go through these ups and downs, and it's cyclical. So we've been through it before, but we'll rebound, and we'll be able to get things done in the future.
Anybody else have anything to close out this season?
What am I going to do on Wednesday nights now?
What's that?
What am I going to do on Wednesday nights now?
Watch reruns.
Season finale.
I've learned a lot.
Season finale.
Thank you.
Well, I want to also thank the team I worked with, but I want to thank Sharon for all of her hard work. And she does so much every budget season just to keep up with all of this. And as much as we're meeting and trying to stay on top of it, she's doing 10 million things each day because she's getting 10 million corrections. So thank you, Sharon, for giving us a great product to be able to work with.
Nothing further. Further?
It would be so much more difficult without Sharon in the mix, I'll tell you right now. So, yeah, we all appreciate what she does. Thank you.
Okay, if nothing further, we had I believe I heard some.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A second, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.